Hey Onefootballers, welcome back to another episode of One Football Debates, where we answer the biggest question in football. The question this week is, who is the most underrated midfielder in Europe? You probably have someone in your mind, but before you type away first or your comment, we have two guys who are going to debate it out to answer that particular question. We have the all-knowing football-nissian Mr. Statman Dave, and he'll be taking on the one, the only Mr. Steve Howson. As you can see, the guys are raring to go. So first up, I'm going to let Steve put forward his argument.
I think you have to frame the question a little bit, because if you was just talking purely about the best, everyone's going to say De Bruyne. I think that's absolutely fine to say. He's the best midfielder in Europe right now. So to call him underrated, I think to call him underrated would be insane. For me, Paul Pogba's the second best midfielder in the Premier League, just behind De Bruyne. But the public consensus of him is that he's a poor player. So I think Pogba's probably a little bit underrated, but I'm not going to say he's the most underrated, because I think he's also very highly rated by people. Now, I think I'm going to go with a serious unknown. I'm a big fan of Weigl. I think he's an excellent player that could probably do bits at the very, very top level. I like Milinkovic-Savic. I like Pjanic. I actually think Emre Can is probably mega underrated. I think he's a fantastic footballer, and I think he's a linchpin of what Liverpool are doing at the moment. I like Niguez, but the guy that I'm going to go with is Aouar. I'm definitely butchering Aouar. The guy from Lyon, number 8 for Lyon.
And then on to you, Statman Dave.
It's always nice to look at young players. I think it's nice to be like, oh, that guy's for the future. That guy's going to be good. But in terms of how he's rated, he's a young player. He's probably rated correctly how he can be his first season in Liga. You know, not really blowing them away like a Lacazette, like a Fekir. Their impact was pretty big from when they were young players. In terms of underrated, you've got to go to the top of the game for me to get the real players that you feel that don't get enough credit. And for me, it's Casemiro, Real Madrid defensive midfielder.
Now, how can you win this debate? I'm going to let you go first, Steve, seeing as you're the first person to put forward your player.
Dave, Casemiro's playing in the midfield of Modric, Kroos and Isco, right? He's not underrated. He actually came third in the midfield ratings in the Champions League last year. He was voted as number 3 in the midfielder. He is rated. He was also in the Champions League squad of last year. He is rated. This is underrated. It's not who's the great. I think Casemiro's magic, and everything that you said is absolutely correct. But we're talking about underrated here. Casemiro is rated. He's literally been rated the 3rd best midfielder in Europe. He's rated. I'm going for an unknown guy here. This is a guy that is a box-to-box. I'm not talking about potential. Now, I agree with you said, yeah, if he's got potential, this, that, no, I'm not talking about potential. This is a young lad that's doing it right now, and he's doing it in a midfield with Toussaint and Dombele, and he is absolutely smashing it. At 19 years of age, he's the most underrated midfielder in Europe.
So what's your reply to that, Statman?
It's interesting because you say Casemiro was ranked number 3. For me, Casemiro should be ranked number 1. He's the glue. He nicks it all together, and I think that's looking at it in isolation. Yeah, he can play. He plays with a good midfield. Yeah, he plays with Isco. Yeah, he plays with Kroos. Yeah, he plays with Modric. But he is the guy that is the glue that is knitting this. It's all together. You know, when you've got players like Cristiano Ronaldo, Gareth Bale, Benzema in your side, you need someone to do the defensive work of 2 people. Casemiro does the defensive work of 3 people on his own, and that is why he is the most underrated player in world football. Your lad one day, maybe he can lace the boots of Casemiro, and potentially one day he'll be as underrated as Casemiro, but he's not there in terms of being even rated.
It's not there. It's not about ability, Dave. It's about where they're rated. Casemiro is literally rated as the 3rd best midfielder in Europe. And if he is number 1, then he's only 2 places away. But where's Aouar rated? If he's rated at 100th, he should be in the top 50. So he is the most underrated. It's quite simple.
So what's your reply to that, man? I know you're laughing, but that was a pretty good argument put forward there by Steve.
Yeah, but then, at the end of the day, it's lad's 19. I think in terms of rating 19-year-olds, it's always dangerous to over and underrate. So it's very whether you see yourself and
with his ability. Ability is another thing altogether. I absolutely agree. Casemiro is fantastic, but he is a rated player. Like I said, if someone has come and said De Bruyne's underrated, you'd be like, who doesn't think De Bruyne's amazing? De Bruyne is amazing. It's about who is underrated, and for me, the most underrated has to be the guy they don't know.
Same logic there. The top 20 players in the world that were voted for the Ballon d'Or, Casemiro didn't make that list. He should be there. He's in one of the best midfields in world football. So to his peers who vote for the Ballon d'Or, to managers of international teams that vote for the Ballon d'Or, to managers of club sides who vote for the Ballon d'Or, they're underrating him. He's not even in the top 20 players in the world, which is crazy because he's arguably been man of the match in back-to-back Champions League finals in terms of his defensive contribution. And again, yes, you can say he was rated in the Champions League after they've done that, but this season for the Ballon d'Or, when he's just gone absolutely ham in another final.
Yeah, but we all know that the Ballon d'Or is a popularity contest. It's not really about who is the best footballer.
The same thing.
Because
he's
if you
voted by your peers.
You need
to win by your peers. He's underrated by his peers.
And you're world tougher if you've got a Barcelona or a Real Madrid player to win the thing.
So then to you, Steve, in terms of your player, why do you think he's not being rated as high as you think he should be? Like, what's holding him back? Is it age? Because if he's 19, like Statman Dave said, then he's probably not going to get rated. He's only been playing for a while and people have only known him for a little bit.
Exactly. And that's why he's underrated. Because he's playing at a very, very high level at the moment. Like I said, I put him as a shade under Paul Pogba. I'd probably say he's probably one of the top 40 or 50 players in world football at the moment. If you go and watch this guy, go and watch how he dictates games, see the level of ability he's displaying. I'm not talking about potential. I'm not talking about what he might do in the future. I'm not talking about what he may do one day on the international stage. I think he's getting underrated because he's doing it in the French league, and typically the French league does get underrated. It's seen as a bit of an easier league, especially if you play for one of the top clubs, which he does. And I think it's because people just have never been exposed to this guy on a domestic or international level. And because of that, which is always the case, people underrate the guy.
So then to you, Statman Dave, in terms of Casemiro, what more can he do to become rated? Or do you think because he's playing for Real Madrid, he's always going to be overshadowed by the massive signings that they have or the other players that are more attacking-minded?
Yeah, he's always going to be overshadowed. He's always going to be underappreciated. And I think without Casemiro in that Real Madrid team, they don't win back-to-back Champions Leagues. It's as simple as that. You take Casemiro out of that team, you put him in other teams, they're going to win the Champions League, and Real Madrid aren't. You need that blend in football, and that is why he's so underrated, is because he provides that blend, and it's so, so important. And to not have someone like that in that Real Madrid team would be crazy. Imagine a midfield of Isco, Kroos and Modric. You've got no one there to turn the ball over. If you lose the ball, you're in massive, massive trouble in terms of winning it back. And again, that is why he is underrated, not just because of him as a player, but also because he's so, so important in this side.
So just to play devil's advocate, obviously Madrid aren't having the best of seasons. So is it a case that he's simply just not that good? Or is it actually the truth? Let me know your argument.
I think Madrid's problems come for a lot of different reasons. I think firstly, the injury problems of Gareth Bale have caused Madrid to be a little bit unbalanced up top. When Ronaldo at the start of the season, was just not putting the ball in the back of the net. He had a terrible conversion rate, one of the worst in Europe's top 5 leagues. Of course, Ronaldo is so focused on winning a Ballon d'Or. You know, it's this Messi versus Ronaldo level, and that is key to his sort of his whole mindset. And we've seen in 2018 Ronaldo back in form, back flying in the Champions League, scoring goals for fun in La Liga, and then Real Madrid seem to be fine again. So I don't think it's anything to do with someone like a Casemiro, whose job isn't to score the goals. His job is to defensively protect the back four, and I think he's been doing that fantastically this season. It's more down to the attackers, down to Isco's, who's potentially going to be on his way out of Real Madrid in the summer because of his poor performances this season. You know, with Real Madrid as well, the bringing the likes of Asensio and Vasquez back into the side has been crucial. You look at Vasquez in 2018, he's got more assists than any other player. In La Liga, he's got the most chances created as well per 90 minutes. So you're seeing that Zidane has had to change his side again and evolve it, but it's nothing to do with Casemiro. It's all about getting his attack right. And now he's got that right. Real Madrid look like a dominant side again. Of course, beating PSG in the Champions League, they're going to beat them in the return leg as well. So with Casemiro in there, it's not really his responsibility, and the poor form isn't really on his back. It's more on the attackers.
Just finally, gentlemen, your final arguments as to why your player is the most underrated. Statman Dave, I'll let you go first. You've got literally 30 seconds. I'm going to time it. Ready, go.
Well, first up, I could pronounce Casemiro. He's one of the most underrated players in world football. Didn't even make the Ballon d'Or list last season of the last 20 players. In terms of tackles, won the most in the last 2 finals, as I mentioned before. So important. His Real Madrid team gives balance, gives tenacity, but also aggression. Iron Robin was in his back pocket last season. The likes of Antoine Griezmann was in his back pocket. Everyone's been in Casemiro's back pocket because he's that dominant at defensive midfield.
5 seconds left. Doesn't even need it. So, Steve, you're next. 3, 2, 1. Your closing argument, sir.
Of course, you can pronounce Casemiro's name. He plays for one of the biggest clubs in the world, and he was voted third best midfielder in Europe last season. He is rated. People are aware of him. People do know how good he is. Forget about the public perception of what's going on. Those who watch football are fully aware of how good Casemiro is. Aouar is going to be the next generation. He is super underrated. At 19 years of age, he's dominating games, controlling games, a true box-to-box midfielder with all the ability in the world at his feet. But you've never heard of him, and I can't even pronounce his name, which proves he is the most underrated player.
We just had the guys' closing statements. You can vote, so all you need to do is go to the corner of this video where you can vote for who you think is the most underrated midfielder in Europe. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Statman Dave for joining us. Make sure you go check out his YouTube channel at Statman Dave on YouTube. Simple as that. You can find the link in our description. And I want to thank Mr. Steve Howson for joining us well. You can check out his YouTube channel in our description. It's Steve Howson on YouTube as well. So it'll be very easy to find. Make sure you say, hey, Onefootball sent us there. And we'll see you again next week. And hopefully, guys, we'll have another great debate. Thanks for joining us, lads. See you later.